Welcome to another episode of Debating is for Life. I am your host, Coach Tanner Higgins, and with me today, special guest, Sterling Mancuso. Welcome, Sterling.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here, Coach Tammer.
Well, I'm very happy to finally get you in the guest seat. You are a guest of honor. And listen, I have to say right up front, I'm just recovering from a flu, so I'm a little bit under the weather, but I have to follow the same advice that I give my kids in this kind of situation, and that is suck it up, Buttercup. And I'm just going to let you do most of the talking because I know that's what you do best. Anyway.
Sounds good. But I will say, Tamer Higazi, even at 80 or 50% capacity, is still 200% an ordinary person's capacity and energy. So I'm sure those will be great.
Now everybody knows why I invited you on the show. In any case, this background picture says it all. This is where we met. So maybe you can fill us in a little bit.
Yeah, so this background picture is beautiful Pickering College, which, as we like to joke, is neither a college nor in Pickering, but is the high school that I went to in Newmarket many years ago now, about the past life, it feels. And at the time, Coach Tammer was Mr. Higazi, a English and Spanish teacher and an ESL teacher, and maybe taught a few other things as well while he was there. And I never actually had him as a teacher. We never were in the same class or anything, but I'm trying to think back now. This was so many years ago. This was literally like 10 years ago. I think it was the first week, maybe even the first day of school, there was the clubs fair, or we had there was what they called the co-curricular program. You were required as students to sign up for clubs at this school. And so they had them all set up in the big gymnasium. And I was just I remember walking around the gymnasium and trying to find a club that looked like something I would like to spend my time on. Most of them were athletic, different sports teams. Not for me. I walked past those booths without a second thought. And then I came across this booth, smaller booth, not as many people gathered around it, at the end of the gym. And I remember two people there. There was a student named Grant Kavanaugh, who sort of beckoned me over. And then there was Mr. Higazi, who grasped me intellectually and mentally and told me to sign up for the debate team. And I'm sure had a full speech ready of the top 10 reasons why one should join the debate program, which I did. And that was quite the year, from that little beginning, being roped in at the clubs fair and going to team meetings every week, learning under the tutelage of Coach Higazi, who really, I mean, you kept things interesting. Every week was something new. There was some new scheme you'd cooked up, some new game you'd invented.
In the beginning days of our club, while it was still quite small, I used to make tea. We met after school on Fridays, and it was the only club that met on Fridays, and it was the only club that was not mandatory attendance, if you recall. And when we were still under 12 students, I used to make tea and bring it, and we'd all have tea. Do you remember that? Or was that?
I think that was the year before. So if I understand the history correctly, maybe one day you'll have to bring one of the real original first year ever students onto your podcast. But I was a year two student.
Aiden Slind, which was my very first captain of my team. Any case, this is about you. Listen, I want to say, just as part of your intro, not only were you the two-time captain of my debate team, and in those days it was a dictatorship under and I anointed you captain, and I did it twice. And because you were the poster boy of our debate club, but you were also the poster boy of this entire school. And I got to say, I felt really, really honored when you agreed to join me as a level 4 debate coach at Debating Edge, the business that I founded and I'm still running today. And so today, Sterling Mancuso, you are a law student at U of T. And
for a few more months, that's right.
For a few more months, so it's almost coming to an end, your law school. But I want you to, I want everyone to know, not only were you a law student at one of the most prestigious law schools in the world, and certainly in Canada, but you were courted by U of T Law. They didn't even let you finish your undergrad. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, courted might be too strong of a term, but how it works is, so I guess flash forward or flashback to undergrad, before the pandemic times, BP, before pandemic, in 2019, and I'm in my second year of undergrad, and I'm beginning to think, well, what the heck do I want to do with my life after I graduate? And I sort of start thinking, well, I like talking, I like reading, and I like writing. So I guess this whole law thing might be a path that I might want to pursue. So I start having a look at different law schools, and I realize that buried in the terms and conditions of the University of Toronto Law School is that you don't actually have to have graduated in order to become a student at the law school. You don't actually have to have finished your undergrad. You're allowed to apply with only 3 years finished. And I thought, well, I'm sure this never actually happens. I'm sure that this is just some relic of a bygone age. But why not? I'll give it a try. I'll throw my hat into the ring and see what happens. And I remember actually writing up my application on the train to work one morning over the summer of 2019. So the summer before my third year of undergrad. I just wrote up a statement on the train because I didn't think it would work. I thought this is just a pipe dream. And then fast forward a few months, and in December, just before Christmas 2020, I get a call. They still call people. They individually call everyone who gets accepted to the U of T Law School, saying that I had been accepted into the law school, which was a bit of a shock because I honestly didn't really expect it would work out. And so because of that, I had to sort of mull over for a few months. Do I want to finish my undergrad and postpone this for a year, or do I want to go straight over next year? And I spent a couple of months thinking about it, and ultimately I decided, well, why wait? Why put off what I'm going to be doing eventually anyway? And I actually hit the accept button and accepted my offer the week that the world started falling apart. We were at a
So the week that
restaurant.
the world was falling apart, your world was just starting to come together.
And then in more ways than one, because that was also when the world started falling apart with COVID. I had just started working with you might remember. I had just started working at Debating Edge, commuting up to Markham every Saturday to teach the classes. And that was a really interesting experience because when the pandemic first hit and we had to shut down the in-person classes, I thought we were finished. I thought online debating will never work. It's going to be too awkward. It's not going to be the same. This is not going to work. We're done. We're finished. This is the end of the line. But quite the opposite happened. Quite the opposite happened. We started, I mean, we had to try a few different platforms and we had a few different glitches along the way, but we ended up making something that worked. And I was joking with people that summer 2020, when most people were out of work and getting served because they had to, no fault of I was more employed than ever because I was working online during the week. And then on the weekends, I was working 3 or 4 shifts with Debating Edge, teaching debating.
And you didn't have to travel anymore. So it actually got easier for you.
Exactly, yeah. So we were sort of at the front line of the online work revolution. And
I'm glad you brought that up, Sterling, because I do remember there was a little bit of trepidation there, and when we had to transfer to online, and I remember you acting surprised that you still had a job, and as far as I was concerned, I was never gonna let you go. That you're too much of a valuable resource. But speaking of which, I just want to show this picture here. This is a picture.
Oh my goodness.
You and I and Patrick Prochaska, your dear friend and excellent debater.
We're all so young.
Yeah. This is tell us a little bit about this picture. I know we're standing in the meeting room at Pickering College with the group of seven in the background, which I always love that room. It's so charming. But what trophy is this? And what
Saskatchewan behind us. So I think this would have been in grade. This would either have been grade. I think this would have been grade 10 or grade 11. Probably grade 11, because you're still there, and I believe grade 12 was the year when you left for different pastures. So I think this was grade 11. This would have been 2000.
My unfortunate departure.
Which turned out to end up all right in the end. And this was so Patrick and I, are holding the Fulford Cup in this picture, which is the trophy for the winning team, the winning school, after the year-long Fulford tournament, which is a series of 3 tournaments over the year. And schools send 2 teams, one junior team, one senior team, to each of them. At the end of the year, they tally up all the scores, and the highest team, highest junior team, and the highest senior team get to bring back the trophy. And the Fulfords, those were classics. The Fulford debating, that was the bread and butter of my debating experience at Pickering College. They were relatively low stakes. There was no, you didn't move up to the internationals and the worlds if you won a Fulford competition. So they were relatively low stakes, and they were just an opportunity to have some fun, meet people, meet other debaters from all over the province, and to just practice your skills and to hone your skills in front of other motivated, dedicated debaters. And in grade 9, I seem to recall not doing terribly, but not doing excellently. And then in grade 10 and grade 11, beginning to take off a little bit more, and ultimately culminating in getting to bring home the cup with Patch. And we did really well. We prepared really hard. We put on our best performance in, I think it was cross-examination style debating, and got to bring home that trophy. So,
well, you and we went. You said you probably have the same pictures as me, but would you believe that all of the pictures that I had, you remember me, Mr. Photograph, right? I used to take pictures at every single moment during practice at tournaments. I was like the dad taking pictures, and I had tons of pictures. Would you believe they're all gone? And this is like the only picture that remains. And yeah, because it's a long story, but basically my son wiped out the hard drive, and not only my debating pictures, but all of my family pictures, the videos of 20 years worth of pictures gone. In any case, I'm glad that this one stuck around, and I have my memories. One memory that I have of you, a favorite memory. We were in lots of different places competing in debate tournaments in Vancouver. That was awesome. But also the one in Winnipeg. Do you remember in Winnipeg how cold it was that morning? And we decided to go walk to get at Tim Hortons, and you thought that we were just gonna get to Tim Hortons and get back, but we actually trained on the way in a minus 30-degree weather. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. You made me practice my persuasive speech. So the speech I had prepared in advance, because that was at the National Debating and Public Speaking Championships. You had to debate and you had to prepare a speech. And I'll never forget. For whatever bizarre reason, the National Debating Federation decided that the best location and the best time to host this tournament was Winnipeg in February.
We had so many debating escapades and adventures, but I'm just so happy that our debate life did not end at Pickering College, and you and I continued to have debating adventures far into the future, like this one. You were involved in the very first debate in the metaverse, and it was you and my son Gabriel versus me and Megan, all of us debate instructors at Debating Edge. And what was it like debating in the metaverse for you?
It was different. It was a whole different, because then you have to start thinking about physicality in addition to speaking. You have to think about where are my virtual limbs pointed while I'm speaking.
Yeah.
It was a different, but it could be. I know that I imagine this was almost a year ago now, so I imagine the technology has probably already developed quite a bit more than where it was when we put this on. But it could really be a very interesting way of compensating, because Zoom debates obviously are fun and they work, but you can't have 1,000 people in the audience watching, or you can, but they won't be able to see each other because you can't have 1,000 boxes on your screen. It doesn't work. But on the metaverse, in these virtual reality venues, you can have as many people filling up an audience filling up physical space it sort of simulates real life quite well and quite nice.
You are the kind of debater that I always use you as an example when I'm teaching debating. I said, you have to find something to hang your passion on. And that was one thing that was always impressive about you, is it doesn't matter what side of the debate you're on, what the topic is, you always found a way to get very passionate and to get very excited, enthusiastic. And I just want to show a clip of you debating in the Great Debate.
I hope this clip I hope this clip isn't the fake news I gave out at the start of my speech. I hope
Oh, no,
you
no,
cut
no.
that bit out for.
We
Okay.
believe that this resolution is not about the immediate. It is not about the short term. It is about 50 years from now, when the history books are written about the long-term impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. It will not be about a small number of people whose trials were delayed, many of whom will end up being found not guilty for that reason. It will be the fact that there was long-term improvements in the infrastructure that will make it easier for anyone to have access to the justice system for the rest of time. We finally are at a moment, a crucible in history, where the intersection of the coronavirus and the public acknowledgement of racial injustice are coming together, and we finally have the hard data to force governments to change policies and to preserve the right to equality of all people. And it is for these reasons that we are so proud to stand in favor of today's resolution.
But a crucible in history. Who says that? I never knew that word until you said it in the debate. You know, one thing that was impressive about you when you were in high school is you always had your nose in a book. I've never saw you without your nose in a book. And then I realized, oh, the great debaters are always reading. Because in reading, I guess it's a whole separate education. And it really helps in debating that you have larger kind of points of reference and a bigger view of the world because you have more to draw from. Isn't that right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it helps with things, things as basic as just getting a high level of vocabulary, but it also helps by providing analogies and literary analogies. I mean, I read a good mix of fiction and nonfiction, and so you also learn about facts, hard facts that can be brought out in a debate. And I think that debating without knowledge is just mere rhetoric, and you can convince some people just with rhetoric and fancy words, and that works for some people. But there's a good chunk of people out there who really need to be convinced on an intellectual level, and you really need to be able to connect with them and make an argument that sticks. And if it lands with you, then that's a technique that works, and you can incorporate that into your speaking. And if it doesn't land with you, that builds your critical skills and allows you to break down other people's arguments. So absolutely, I think that reading is a very important skill. And this is true not just in debating, but incidentally, this is going into the world that I'm going into. This is very important for law as well, is those three. I mentioned them earlier: reading, writing, and speaking. Those are really the trio, the trilogy, the trinity of skills that you need in order to be a successful lawyer. And you really do, if you want to go down the path that I want to go down of litigating, you really need to be able to do all three at a very high level. If you miss out on any one of them, then the other two fall apart.
Well, I can't think of anybody that's better suited to become a litigator than you. I would be trembling to have to face you in the court. In any case, I'm very proud of you, Sterling, and it's just an amazing journey that you've been on. And I'm really happy to be part of that rhetorical journey and to see it culminating with you almost graduating from law school. And one more thing before we move on, the big news. You just got offered a job. Can you tell us?
I did just get offered a job. So for those who are not, those listeners who may not be aware how this whole legal profession works, when law students graduate, they have to spend a year doing what's called articling, which usually means apprenticing under a lawyer for a year, and then you become a lawyer yourself. But there's a second option you can take, which is called clerking, which is a little bit harder to do. There's fewer spots, it's more competitive. And what you do there, if you're a clerk, is instead of apprenticing under a lawyer, you apprentice under a judge for a year. And so I found out this past week that my clerkship application had been accepted, and I will be clerking under a justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, Justice Andromac Karakatsanis, for a year, which will involve me moving to Ottawa and assisting a judge of the Supreme Court of Canada, getting stuck into all the materials that they're dealing with, and providing what possible assistance I can provide. So that's an exciting,
just amazingly exciting, but not shocking in the least. Just congratulations. So awesome. That's really great news. I'm so happy for you. All right. Are you ready to move on and with our first activity of the day?
I'm trembling, but let's do it.
Okay. Well,